Just one day after President Trump claimed that inflation was dead in the U.S., new inflation numbers have been released, and according to the latest data, the numbers are at their highest level since February. Scripps News White House reporter and producer Jacob Garden-Schwartz is live now at the White House. Good afternoon to you, Jacob. So we just got this federal data about inflation last month. What is the latest, and how is the White House responding to these disappointing numbers?
Yeah, good afternoon, Patrick. Let's dig into the numbers first. As you alluded to this morning, we got new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics about the Consumer Price Index that tracks how costs have increased or decreased over time. And as you alluded to, a slight increase from what previously we had seen both last year and last month. So looking at those numbers specifically, the overall Consumer Price Index rose about 2.7% versus last June and about 1/3% versus last year. Another number that we often look at is so-called core inflation that takes out some of the more volatile numbers, things like energy prices or food prices that shift a lot, looking at some of the other indicators that give us a better sense of what prices are doing. That is also up 2.9% from last year and about 0.2% from last month. So again, a slight increase overall, but certainly not necessarily good news for those who want inflation and prices to come down. These numbers somewhat in line with what economists had expected, and as you start to dig into it a little bit more, it's clear that this is really the first time we are starting to see the impact of President Trump's tariffs on inflation. Digging into the data a little bit more, some of the biggest price increases were on goods and services that are most impacted by tariffs. Things like household furnishings, things like appliances, which are up just about 2%, apparel up a little under 0.5%. These are all things that are, imported from abroad for the most part, and therefore subject to the president's tariffs. As you might expect, Democrats seizing on this news quite quickly, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the top Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, releasing a statement blasting President Trump's previous claims that tariffs are not impacting inflation, and saying, quote, "Americans continue to struggle with the costs of groceries and rent, and now prices of food and appliances are rising." On the flip side of things, the White House really brushing off these numbers. Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt in a statement telling us that, quote, "Every month since the president took office, core inflation has matched or beat expectations, and the data proves that President Trump is stabilizing inflation, and the Panicans," that's what the White House calls anybody who panics about data, "continue to be wrong about tariffs raising prices." As you alluded to, it was just yesterday that the president stated that inflation was, quote, "dead." In comments this morning on Truth Social, he instead amended his tune a little bit, stating that inflation was very low. So again, not dire straits by any means, but certainly a complicated picture that, definitely undermines a little bit of what the White House spin has been, which is that tariffs have not impacted inflation whatsoever. We will certainly continue to have to watch sort of the numbers for future months to see if anything changes moving forward. Patrick.
Panicans, that's a new word, I think, for a lot of us, Jacob. So safe to say then, given that response from Karoline Leavitt, that this really is not going to be changing the president's trade agenda?
Certainly, publicly, the White House is pressing forward. The president still insisting that his August 1st deadline for those reciprocal tariffs will take effect. As we've been reporting over the last several weeks, the president sending letters to a number of different nations proposing new tariff levels for imports from those countries. And something that I was admittedly a little bit confused about is that we have heard economists for months now talking about how tariffs are expected to increase the costs of goods. And it's really not until now that we've seen that impact fully, and even in these numbers, as I noted, still somewhat minimal. I spoke to an economist at the University of Tampa this morning. Here's a little bit of how she explained to me why we're seeing what we're seeing. Take a listen.
The tariff policy has really been all over the place. It's like a bad boyfriend, on again, off again, on again, off again. And we don't know what exactly is coming next. And so we might not have seen those prices manifest just because the tariffs that we've been anticipating either haven't yet been enacted or they've been recalled. Just because we are not seeing them yet does not mean that we will not be seeing these price increases. The economics about tariffs and prices is very well studied and very, very clear on this.
So So economists, they're still expecting to continue to see a growing influence of these tariffs on prices. The president, meanwhile, as we've noted, pledging forward with these new reciprocal tariffs on August 1st, most recently sending letters announcing new tariff rates on some of our biggest trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. The European Union's president shooting back with their own statement. She wrote, quote, "We remain ready to continue working towards an agreement by August 1st, but at the same time, we will take all necessary steps to safeguard EU interests." She said that the tariffs disrupt essential transatlantic supply chains to the detriment of businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. That's, of course, those reciprocal tariffs. But in the meantime, we also have seen just in the past 24 hours some action behind the scenes on some product and industry-specific tariffs. A new tariff announced on imports of tomatoes, which are grown in Mexico, and a new investigation into drone supply chain manufacturing. That's often the first step in what could be a tariff specifically targeting drones. Patrick?
Meanwhile, Jacob, we understand that the president is going to Pennsylvania today, talking about AI and energy. What's on tap?
Yeah, as we're thinking about the economy, certainly AI and energy development, key parts of that, and the president, at the invitation of Senator David McCormick of Pennsylvania, will be in Pittsburgh later this afternoon for what's being described as the Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit. And we understand there he's expected to announce around $90 billion worth of private investment in the state for energy development. Of course, AI companies require quite a bit of energy in order to process all of that data. And so officials from some of the top AI companies as well as energy firms expected to be in attendance there. We'll, of course, be monitoring to see what news the president makes once he lands in the Keystone State. Patrick?
All righty. That's Scripps News White House producer and reporter Jacob Gardner-Schwartz reporting live for us from the White House. Jacob, thanks. We appreciate it.